I never thought the phrase, home early, could detonate my entire universe. But that Tuesday, it did. My name is Elena Harper, 42, senior graphic designer at a boutique agency in Seattle. Recently divorced from a man who decided midlife crisis meant buying a Porsche and dating his Pilates instructor. The house on Queen Anne Hill was too big for just me and Jake, my 19-year-old son who was supposed to be at community college until 4. I would left the office at 2 because a migraine was clawing behind my eyes, and all I wanted was silence, yoga pants, and maybe a glass of the good Pinot I kept for emergencies. The house greeted me with its usual quiet. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, dust motes doing their lazy ballet. Jake's sneakers were kicked off by the stairs size 13. Impossible to miss, so I knew he was home. I figured he was gaming with headphones on, the way teenagers do when they think the world can't reach them. I tiptoed past his door on the second floor, planning to collapse in my own room, but a sound stopped me cold. It was rhythmic, soft, almost swallowed by the hum of his computer fan, but unmistakable once your brain locked onto it. A quick inhale, a stifled grunt, the faint rustle of fabric. My hand froze on the banister. Every maternal instinct screamed, "Turn around, Elena, go downstairs, pretend you heard nothing." But curiosity, or something darker, glued my feet to the carpet. His door was cracked open 2 inches. Just enough. I should have knocked. I should have called his name from the hallway like a normal mother. Instead, I leaned forward, silent as a thief, and peered through that sliver of light. Jake was sprawled on his bed, jeans and boxers shoved down just far enough, one hand moving in that urgent, familiar rhythm. Teenagers perfect when they believe they have all the time in the world. His head was thrown back, eyes squeezed shut, lips parted. Afternoon sun painted gold across his bare chest. God, when had his shoulders gotten so broad? And lower, where his fingers worked with increasing desperation. My breath caught so sharply I was terrified he would hear it. There are moments your body decides things before your mind catches up. My pulse thundered in my ears, heat flooding places that had no business reacting. I told myself it was shock. Biology. Simple mammalian response to the sight of a beautiful young man in the throes of pleasure. Except the young man was my son. And the heat pooling between my thighs felt anything but simple. He made a small, frustrated sound, half groaning, half whimper, and I realized he was struggling. His wrist had that telltale cramp teenagers get when they are too proud to use lube and too impatient to pace themselves. His poor squirrel was frantic, trying to scramble out of the jar, but the jar was not cooperating. I watched, paralyzed, as he shifted angles, brow furrowing in adorable concentration. Adorable. Jesus, Elena. I do not know what possessed me. Maybe it was the 2 years of celibacy since the divorce. Maybe it was the loneliness that had become a second skin. Maybe it was the way he looked exactly like his father at that age, but warmer, kinder, still mine. Whatever the reason, the words slipped out before I could stop them. Sweetheart, you are going to hurt yourself like that. His eyes snapped open. For one eternal second we stared at each other, me in the doorway like a deer in headlights, him frozen mid-stroke. Face flaming crimson. The silence was so complete, I could hear the wet sound of his hand still loosely wrapped around himself. Mom, it came out, a strangled squeak. He yanked the blanket over his lap, knocking his phone to the floor in the process. I thought you were at work until 6. I had a migraine. Brilliant explanation, Elena. Really smooth. He looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. His ears were practically glowing. I should have backed out, apologized, closed the door, and spent the next decade in therapy. Instead, my feet carried me forward, 1 step, 2, until I was inside his room and the door clicked shut behind me. Jake, honey, breathe. My voice sounded foreign, calm, almost amused. It is natural. Everyone does it. Not everyone gets caught by their mother, his expression screamed. He could not meet my eyes. The blanket tented, obviously. The poor boy was still painfully hard, adrenaline doing nothing to help. I sat on the edge of his bed, careful to leave a foot of space between us, though every nerve ending felt like it was reaching across that gap. "I am not mad," I said softly. "I am. Honestly, a little impressed you managed to keep quiet. These walls are thin." A startled laugh burst out of him, half hysteria. "Oh my God, Mom, please stop talking." But the tension cracked just enough. His shoulders dropped a fraction. I could see him trying to will his body into submission and failing spectacularly. The blanket twitched. I heard myself say, "You look uncomfortable." Understatement of the century. He risked a glance at me then, those green eyes, my eyes wide and pleading. For what, I was not sure. Mercy, amnesia, potion, a time machine. The responsible parent in me was screaming. The woman in me, the one who had not been touched in forever, who'd spent years putting her own desires last, was suddenly, terrifyingly loud. I reached out and rested my hand on his knee through the blanket. He flinched but did not pull away. "Jake," I said, voice barely above a whisper, "do you want help?" The question hung in the air like smoke. His lips parted. No sound came out. But his eyes, God, those eyes darkened, pupils blown wide. The blanket shifted again, betraying him. I waited, heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Finally, so quietly I almost missed it, yes. One word. One syllable. And everything changed forever. The word yes hung between us like a live wire, crackling. I felt it zap straight through my palm, up my arm, and detonate somewhere behind my ribs. For a second, I thought I might actually faint like one of those Victorian ladies who discover a bare ankle and keel over. Except the bare ankle in question belonged to my own son, and it was attached to something considerably more impressive than an ankle. Jake's breathing had gone shallow and fast. The blanket rose and fell in tiny, frantic waves. I could see the outline of his fist, still clamped around himself under the fabric, knuckles white. "Mom." It was half plea, half warning. I swallowed. My mouth tasted like copper. "Tell me to leave right now, Jake, and I will. Door closes, we never speak of this again. Your call?" He stared at me for the longest 3 seconds of my life. Then, slowly, deliberately, he let go of the blanket and pushed it down to his thighs. There he was. All of him. Hard, flushed, a bead of clear liquid trembling at the tip like it was as nervous as we were. The poor squirrel had definitely been fighting for freedom. The skin looked almost sore from friction. I heard a soft, broken sound mine, apparently. "Jesus, honey," I whispered, "no wonder you were struggling. You are working with heavy machinery here." A hysterical giggle escaped him. "What, it is true." I let myself smile, small, shaky, real. "Your father was respectable. You clearly shopped in the premium aisle." He groaned and covered his face with both hands, but his hips gave the tiniest involuntary roll toward me. The movement was so innocent and desperate, it cracked something open inside my chest. I shifted closer on the bed. The mattress dipped. My skirt rode higher on my thighs. I did not bother fixing it. "May I?" I asked, hovering my hand an inch above him. He peeked through his fingers, nodded once, sharp and fast, like he was afraid I would change my mind. The first touch was feather light, just the pads of 2 fingers along the underside. He jerked like I would shocked him, a strangled F-fuck slipping out before he could stop it. Language, I teased automatically, then ruined the scolding by wrapping my hand fully around him. Warm, velvet over steel. He was thicker than I would imagined, and I had most definitely not been imagining. Thank you very much, brain. And the way he throbbed against my palm made my own body clench in sympathy. "Better?" I asked, giving one slow, experimental stroke. His answer was a full-body shudder and a nod that looked more like a convulsion. I found a rhythm. Gentle at first, watching his face like it was the most fascinating thing I would ever seen. Because it was. Every flicker, the way his brows drew together. The way his bottom lip caught between his teeth felt like a secret he was trusting me with. "I am not gonna last long," he panted after maybe 30 seconds. "I am sorry, nothing to be sorry for." I leaned in, brushed my lips against his temple, tasting salt. "Just let go when you need to, sweetheart. I have got you." He made the most beautiful, broken sound and arched into my hand. I sped up, twisting lightly at the head the way I remembered boys liking when I was his age. His thighs started trembling. "Close," he gasped. I did the only thing that felt natural in that moment. I bent down and pressed a soft, open-mouthed kiss to the tip. That was it, game over. He came with a choked cry, hips bucking, stripes of white painting my fingers, his stomach, one rogue spatter landing on my blouse like abstract art. I kept stroking gently through it, milking every last shudder, until he collapsed boneless against the pillows, chest heaving. The room smelled like sex and teenage boy, and the lavender candle I would bought him for Christmas that he pretended to hate. I grabbed a handful of tissues from his nightstand, because of course he kept them within arm's reach, smart kid, and cleaned us both up with the calm efficiency of a mother who has wiped 1,000 spilled drinks and bloody knees, except this was not that. Jake watched me through half-lidded eyes, looking drugged. "I can't believe that just happened." "Me neither," I said honestly. He reached for my wrist, thumb brushing the inside where my pulse was still racing. Are you okay? Like mentally? 'Cause I feel like I just dragged you into Narnia and slammed the wardrobe door." I laughed, actually laughed, the sound startling both of us. "Sweetheart, I walked into the wardrobe all by myself. You just left the door open." He bit his lip. "So, we are not going to pretend this was a fever dream." I considered. The responsible answer sat on my tongue like a stone. Instead, I heard myself say, "Only if you want to." His eyes searched mine. Whatever he saw there made him exhale shakily and tug me down beside him. I went willingly, curling against his side, my head on his shoulder. He smelled like Irish spring and warm skin and something uniquely Jake. We lay there in silence, long enough for his breathing to even out. My hand rested on his chest, feeling his heart slow to something resembling normal. Eventually he spoke, voice small. "I have thought about you before. Like this. I hated myself for it." The confession should have horrified me. Instead, it felt like puzzle pieces clicking. "I know the feeling," I admitted. "I noticed you noticing me months ago." Told myself it was harmless. Teenage hormones. Single mom proximity. He turned his face into my hair. "It is not just proximity." "No," I agreed. "It is not." His fingers started drawing lazy circles on my bare arm. Goosebumps followed everywhere he touched. "Mom, would it be okay if I kissed you, like, properly?" My heart did a complicated somersault. I lifted my head to look at him. Really look. The boy I would raised, and the man he was becoming, both living in the same, flushed, hopeful face. I answered by closing the distance myself. The kiss started soft, tentative, almost chaste. Then his hand slid into my hair, angling me exactly where he wanted, and it was not soft anymore. It was years of accidental brushes in hallways, years of pretending not to notice how beautiful he would grown, years of loneliness on both sides pouring out in one desperate slide of tongues. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard again. "Wow," he whispered against my mouth. "Yeah, I managed." "Wow." His palm drifted down my side, hesitant. "Can I touch you, please?" I was already nodding before my brain caught up. Morning arrived like a hangover from a drug I never knew existed. Sunlight sliced through the blinds and landed directly on my face, the way it always does when I forget to close the curtains properly. Except last night I had not been in my own bed. I was still in Jake's, tangled in his navy sheets that smelled like him and sex and the faint ghost of my own perfume. My skirt was somewhere on the floor. Blousing, unbuttoned and hanging off one shoulder, bra long surrendered. Jake was draped over me like a human blanket, one heavy thigh between mine, his morning wood pressed insistently against my hip. He was already awake. I could tell by the way his fingers were tracing lazy figure eights on my bare stomach, like he was scared I would vanish if he stopped touching me. "Hi," he whispered, voice rough with sleep, and something that sounded a lot like fear. "Hi yourself." I turned my head, our noses brushed. "Regrets yet?" He answered by kissing me slow and deep, morning breath and all, until my toes curled. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. "Only regret is that I waited 19 years to do that." My heart did something complicated and probably illegal in several states. We stared at each other for a long moment, the weight of daylight pressing down. This was the part where sane people called therapists moved to separate continents, maybe joined a monastery. Instead, I reached down and wrapped my fingers around him because, apparently, sanity had left the building somewhere around the second orgasm last night. He groaned into my neck. "Mom, we should probably talk," I finished, stroking once, twice. "We will." "After what?" he asked, but his hips were already chasing my hand. "After I make you come again with something that is not your own fist for once." He laughed, breathless and shocked. And then there was no more talking. This time was different from the frantic, almost accidental rush of yesterday. This time, we had all the hours in the world and no pretense left to hide behind. He kissed his way down my body like he was memorizing scripture, lingering over every scar and stretch mark like they were treasures. When he reached the lace edge of my panties, he looked up, eyes asking permission. I answered by lifting my hips so he could slide them off. The first slow lick made my back arch clear off the mattress. The second had me fisting his hair by the time he figured out the exact rhythm that turned my brain to static. I was speaking in tongues, or maybe just swearing creatively. He was a ridiculously fast learner, of course he was. He would grown up watching me figure out IKEA furniture with nothing but spite and YouTube. Some skills are genetic. When I came, it was with his name on my lips, and both hands clamped over my mouth to muffle the sound, because even in the throes of illegal levels of pleasure, some habits die hard. Afterward, he crawled back up, smug and glistening, and so proud of himself, I almost laughed. "Your turn?" I said, pushing him onto his back. I took my time. Teased him until he was begging in that cracked, desperate voice that made my chest ache. When I finally sank down onto him, we both froze at the overwhelming rightness of it. Like puzzle pieces that were never supposed to fit but somehow did perfectly. We moved together slowly at first, foreheads pressed, breathing each other in. Then faster, harder, chasing something bigger than release. When he flipped us over and drove into me like the world was ending, I wrapped my legs around his waist and held on for dear life. Afterward, we stayed locked together, sweat cooling, hearts trying to regulate. Eventually, he lifted his head, so... "Pancakes!" I burst out laughing so hard I nearly cried. Pancakes! Sure! The traditional post-taboo breakfast of champions. We managed to make it downstairs without killing ourselves on the stairs, mostly because he carried me when my legs proved unreliable. I was wearing his t-shirt and nothing else. He had on sweatpants riding dangerously low. Domestic as hell, and twice as wrong. At the kitchen island, he poured batters while I started coffee, both of us pretending this was normal. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but heavy with everything we had not said yet. He flipped a pancake, then spoke without looking at me. "I do not want this to be a one-time thing. Or a two-time thing. Or whatever number we are at now." I set my mug down carefully. "Jake. I know it is insane," he rushed on. "I know what people would say. I know the statistics and the laws and the therapy bills we are probably both going to need. But I also know I have never felt anything close to this. Not with anyone." I walked around the island and wrapped my arms around him from behind, pressing my cheek between his shoulder blades. "Me neither," I said quietly. "And I am 42. I have had time to try the alternatives." He turned in my arms, flower on his cheek, eyes ancient. So what do? We figure it out, I said. Quietly. Carefully. Together. We set rules, boundaries, safe words, whatever we need. But we do not pretend last night did not happen. Or this morning. He kissed me then, tasting like batter and coffee and hope. Months later, people would ask why I never dated after the divorce. I would smile mysteriously and say I was waiting for the right person. They would nod knowingly, assuming I meant some future Prince Charming. They had no idea he was already living under my roof, making me laugh until my sides hurt, kissing me goodbye every morning before class, and coming home every night to help me set the squirrel free all over again. Some jars are not meant to stay sealed, and some mothers, it turns out, are really good at lending a hand when their grown-up little boys need it most.